The proper use of credit is one determining factor in building and keeping generational wealth. Limiting the amount of money you are paying to someone else in the form of interest fees and saving within yourself for big ticket items can mean the difference between living stress free and debt free versus having something over your head. My name is Antoine Anderson. This is the Ujamaa Network. Let's talk about the proper use of credit. Old saying was hard head makes for a soft behind. And if you keep beating your head up against that credit wall, you will continue to keep yourself under stress and under debt for as long as you live. The banks have basically made an industry out of and a profit center out of your spending habits. It once was a thing back in the day to say never leave home without it. That was a commercial for one of the major credit cards. It was supposed to be used for emergencies only. But what ended up happening is everything became an emergency. You have people using their credit cards to buy groceries, to buy gas. These are no nos. And the bottom line is, whenever you make those kind of purchases on credit, you're paying far more than what you would pay for in cash. And you're not really making a dent in your credit scores, making them even better by doing that. Because if you're not paying those balances off at the end of the month, you are just incurring more and more debt, digging yourself deeper and deeper in the hole. Here are some of the things that you should be looking out for before you get into this. First, what are the benefits of using credit? Well, the main benefit is you're able to buy bigger ticket items with a period of time over time versus coming up with the cash all at once. Now, that may suit your needs, but again, you have to justify those costs. If you're going to go ahead and make a big ticket item purchase, such as like a furniture set or a washing machine, you didn't have the $1,200 or $1,300 it was going to cost um, at the store at that time. As long as you're paying that balance off at the end of the month and not just making those minimum payments, you should be fine. But you definitely want to make sure you're not carrying balances over a month and over months and months and months, because that's just going to really impact your buying power and could eventually lead to some credit trouble. The other point you want to make out when you're considering using a credit card is some of those risk factors. What are you doing? Um, you're adding stress and adding cost. Those are some disadvantages of having that credit card out and whipping that credit card out whenever you use it. Those disadvantages of adding that risk of not being able to make that payment is going to stress you out. And just the added cost, we're talking about, at this point in time, 19-20% on some of these unsecured credit cards, 29%. And if you're in that venue or that range, you have to ask yourself, is it worth me paying 29% more per month for this item versus just saving the money up and getting it later? If you can avoid using credit cards for that situation, definitely try to. It's just going to save you in the long run. Now, exercising financial discipline is another key part of this whole equation. Credit card companies make a living, they eat off of our spending habits. When we start using credit cards for things like groceries and gas, you probably are spending way more money in other areas than you should. Never pull out that credit card and finance your food, because that is just going to add some unnecessary charges to every bite you take. So definitely figure out a way to use your credit card wisely and determining what factors in when you are making those kind of purchases. In the long run, it's just going to benefit you better. Using it frequently for trivial things is just not the way to go. Now, what are the two types of credit cards you can use for these things? Which one is better for, or the other, one or the other? Let's talk about unsecured versus secured credit cards. With an unsecured credit card, These are amounts that are given to you, but it's set at a particular rate, and how much your credit worthiness will dictate the limit on which you can borrow. That is an enticing thing where you don't have to have that money up front. And again, things like renting a car, it's almost mandatory. If you use a debit card, you're going to have to pay a substantial deposit fee. And it is refundable, but it's coming out of the pocket with that extra money versus a credit card will allow you the flexibility without having to pay that cash deposit. And it's just that simple. That is the only time I really miss having a credit card. I long since cut those things up, but it is going to be on my bucket list once everything else lines up. And that is the next major thing that I'm going to have to do. You have to at least have one credit card just to make sure that you are able to meet a financial obligation, such as a rental fee or some reservations on a flight, without having to pay a ridiculous deposit. And it is just going to change your life in doing so. So that's an unsecured credit card. With a secured credit card, it works the same way. However, you're putting that money up front. That way, if there's no fees that are associated with it, and those fees are where these banks eat. And I've listed all of them that I can think of. And before you even think about getting a credit card, ask these individuals, ask the individual companies what kind of fee structure is going on. What are you going to be charged for? These are fees that have nothing to do with the initial purchase, but just what we're tacking on in addition to what you're buying. And that can literally make or break you. An unsecured credit card will typically come without those fees. You're not stuck with a monthly or annual revenue fee or fee on those cards. You're only borrowing what you have up to borrow, so you're not setting yourself up for any late fees. So definitely think about that before you get into it. The long and the short of it is credit is not your enemy, but it definitely can act like one if you're using it unwisely. Make sure you are talking to your financial professional when it comes to any type of major purchase, making sure that you can afford it. Do not step out of your lane when you're making these purchases on credit, because it can really detrimentally affect your well-being, your health, and everything as you're stressing out on how to pay for something that you probably didn't need at the time. This is just one last tip from Antoine Anderson and Black Investments Matter. Leave your likes, subscribe to the channel, and join us. And we'd love to hear from you. I'll talk to you later.